Today I'm going to show you how to treat a woman properly. I got a couple of questions regarding the high gain tones which I offer in my preset packs for various modeling units. And these questions were mostly about how to achieve a good tone for a live situation or recording situation. And of course that takes a little bit of tweaking as always. But today I would like to focus on one thing which is very important, that is the post-gain EQing, so the shaping of the overall tone that goes to the front of house system. By the way, if you would like to get my preset packs for your favorite modeling unit, please contact me on Facebook or Instagram. Links are in the description below. And please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. I'm using my one of my favorite modeling units, which is the Fractal Audio FM9, and the editor is here. Currently I'm playing one preset which I created for live usage, and it sounds like this. And although it sounds very well-rounded, balanced in my opinion, I would like to show you what you can do when you are creating your own presets. So first of all, let me disengage these fancy effects here, the enhancer, the compressor, and the multi-one compression. So basically the amp, the cap. And first of all, you have to understand that we are today EQing the signal after it goes to the after it leaves the speaker. So it's the post-gain EQ, as you may call it. There's also one thing which is called pre-gain EQing. If you insert an equalizer in front of the amp, or especially in front of the preamp, then you can use this as a boost section, but I will address this in another video. So first of all, let's disengage the high cut of the cabinet. And this is the pure tone. I am using a IR which I was shooting, but for the purpose of the video, let's use another IR. So here we have an own hammer IR, and as you can hear, it sounds different from my favorite tone. Not bad at all. But let's see what we can do. So first of all, we are using a parametric EQ because it's the most flexible of all the EQs, and you have to understand how these things work. And you have different sections where you can address different frequencies. So for example, here you have a section which is currently addressing the 400 Hertz. You can choose another frequency here, of course, and you can choose the range around the center frequency which is affected. And here you set the actual amount of the of this section. So for example, if you raise the 400 Hertz with this bandwidth, you can see the curve here, and if you set it higher, then you have a more more slope here, and if we reduce it, you have a wider effect, so to speak. And you can also choose here from peaking or shelving. And as you can see, the lowest band and the highest band, they're typically set to shelving. What that means is if you do something here, it will affect everything below this frequency, or in the case of the highest band here, above the frequency. What you can also do is you can use a cut here, which is called blocking in this case, and that is cutting off everything above this frequency. So as you can see, if you choose blocking, then you don't have the EQ here, and also not the gain control, because it's cutting off everything above, in this case, 3199 Hertz. Instead of the EQ, you can choose here this thing which is affecting the slope. But let's leave it at shelving for the moment. And the first thing which I would like to address is, if you are not happy with your tone, especially in a live situation, you can start by cutting off the highs and the lows. But this is a method which is not that flexible, because there may be some high frequencies which you're cutting off, which actually you don't want to cut off. So for example, if you're cutting off here everything, maybe above 5K, sounds like this. This might be okay in a live situation. And if you want to get a quick result, I'd recommend to play around with the high cut. It's definitely something where you don't need to know much about EQ, but if you set it around maybe 5 or 6K, then you get rid of all the harshness and the frequencies which can get really ear-piercing. But maybe you don't want to reduce everything here because it sounds maybe too dull. And let's say there are some frequencies, of course, which are which you want to dial out, but not everything. For example, if you want to leave the 8K in there. So what you can do is you can look for the frequencies which are really annoying. And let's use a peaking filter here. And typically, if you're using a V30 speaker, there's something around maybe the 6K and also maybe 4K, which can be a little bit annoying. So let's set it to 6K first. And what we are doing is, we don't want to reduce it everything around the 6K, so we have to set it here like that it's only affecting the 6K. And you can also raise it first to find the frequency, as mentioned, that is annoying. These are okay in my opinion. Here it's really annoying. Here it's also a little bit annoying around the 4K, but we will come to that later. Maybe let's start here, and then we reduce it. And you can reduce it drastically. So I hope you can hear the effect. And this is way more flexible than just cutting off everything, because if you were just eliminating the frequencies which are annoying, you have the other frequencies which are there and which are not annoying, and they can be used to widen your tone. So for example, you don't have the 8K here affected. What you can do is you can cut off everything maybe above, I think, 10 or 12K, because that is really, not really usable in a live situation, I would say. At least for high gain guitar tones. The high gain guitar tones, they live pretty much in the mids, so usually I would like, if you want to change the character of your tone, I would look in between 100 Hertz and maybe the 5K. But the highs, they are important to cut through the mix. So as I said, I don't recommend to cut off everything. Instead, I would recommend to filter out the frequencies which are annoying. Oh, sorry, I changed this. It was maybe around this. So it sounds much more pleasing to my ear. Maybe not for a recording situation, but in a live situation, it may sound much better. So we also saw the 4K, which were a little bit annoying. So let's try to play around with that. Let's see if we raise it. Yeah, you have this. I don't know if you can hear it. Don't do it with your eyes, do it with your ears. So where this curve is, it's not important, but well, I end up, let's say here. So now we end up with a tone which is maybe pleasant, but a little bit too bass heavy in my opinion. And also with the bass frequencies, I don't recommend to cut off everything. Maybe you can cut off below, I think, 50 or 60 Hertz, because again, that is not really helpful. Oh, and by the way, if you are playing in another tuning, especially down tuning, you may have to EQ it completely different, because then it can get maybe more bass heavy, but I'm currently in the standard tuning. So you also have to find out the frequencies which are annoying here, and usually, as I said, the guitar lives in the mids, so in between maybe 100 Hertz and 5K. So if it's too bass heavy, I would start to, or too muddy, I would start to look in the lower mid range, so maybe in between 200 and 400 Hertz. And let's do it with this filter here. Let's set it to peaking. Maybe we can choose peaking too. Let's see. By the way, let's see what difference that is making. Okay, it seems to have a wider range. And let's choose peaking 1 because we want to be more precise. And let's see. Crank it. Here's something, I think, around the 250 Hertz. Really annoying. I hope you can hear it. So can reduce it more. And what you get is a tone which is way more balanced. And by the way, I would use this method only to reduce frequencies. So I wouldn't recommend to raise frequencies with that slope, because you don't know which speaker maybe you're playing through and what the environment is, where the front of house system is located. So there may be some systems which are not linear and which are pushing some frequencies. And if it's suddenly something which you are pushing here in a very narrow bandwidth, then it can end up in a completely mess. So if you want to raise something, I would recommend to use a wider slope, usually. So I'm always starting around maybe 0.7 or 1.0. But today, or currently, we are focusing on eliminating the annoying frequencies. By the way, Of course, before you do this with the EQ, I'd recommend to get the best tone out of your amp. And in this case, everything is at 12 o'clock, as you can see. I adjust the gain, the input trim. Here you have an output EQ, graphic EQ, which is easier to use, but I would use this for the overall tone shaping. But here, this is way more precise if you want to eliminate something. And typically, these frequencies which are annoying, they're coming from the cap. Might be a little bit too much still. So let's reduce it. But I think there's another frequency in this lower mid-range, which is a little bit annoying. So let's start around 400 Hertz and see if we can find out that. This 350 is also really weird here, so let's do this. And I think now it sounds way more balanced in my ears, but it could be that there is a little bit too much bass frequencies, that there are a little bit too much bass frequencies, so maybe we can go higher with low cut. Now some people are setting it around maybe 100 Hertz or 120. I would recommend to leave that completely to the front of house engineer, because he can do this, get as much low frequencies as he needs from the guitar. So that's what you can do here, and of course you could do more with maybe the upper mids, but currently I don't think that there's a problem with the upper mids with this tone. It's more the lower mids which are which need some adjustment here, in my opinion. What you can do is if you have something which sounds a little bit card boxy or a little bit too trebly, then play around with the frequencies here in between 500 Hertz and maybe 2K. So I will show you what that does. Usually a good point is to start in the center around maybe 800 or 750 Hertz. If you crank this can get a little bit honky, especially if you're boosting the amp with a mid-heavy pedal like a Tube Screamer. These are the frequencies which you can dial out then. Here's something whistling. And also here, I think. So let's start. So these are the frequencies which are usually causing the problems when it's too too honky. So 1K, 2K, and I did a video where I was explaining the effects of the frequencies and which frequency is responsible for which effect. But I can give you a short overview. So let's start with the 100 Hertz, 120 Hertz. These are the frequencies which are usually the bass frequencies. Then you have the lower mids, which can cause really muddiness. Typically, maybe 200 up to 400 Hertz. Maybe you could start with the 250 Hertz if you would like to address that range. If it sounds too boxy, like maybe a Vox amp, maybe start around the 400 Hertz and try to play around with that. If it starts too honky, it's maybe around the 800 Hertz up to 2K. 2K is, to me, it's like the car boxy frequency. And I really like a horn, and they can get 2K frequencies. They can get annoying if you are overdoing it with that. They are very helpful if you would like to have a crunchy or crunchy metal tone for riffage. But if you overdo it, it can get annoying at loud volumes. 3K is the for me it's the don't know how to describe it. It's the edge of the tone, in my opinion. So if you would like to have more percussive, or you would like to hear the pick of the note, you can play around with 3K without getting too annoying frequencies. And 4K is more or less the presence frequencies that help you to cut through a mix. Everything above that, it's not that important. Again, I wouldn't cut it off completely, but I would. Don't use it to shape my tone. Just eliminate the annoying frequencies. So this method is very helpful, and I hope it works with your modeling gear, or of course it works also with conventional gear, but it's more or less to use it after the cap, in my opinion, because the cap is shaping the overall tone pretty much, and usually these spikes, they're coming from the cap or the microphone you're using with analog gear. Of course, in the modeling unit is this cap block where it's simulated, and you can apply it after that. So hope this helps you, and hope to see you. Adios.